All right, thanks for tuning in. It's Ishmael Sistrunk from the St. Louis American and STLamerican.com, and you are now in the clutch. This week, my article in the paper, I'll have a link down below, but it was about the rise of the black quarterback. Of course, this past weekend we had Colin Kaepernick, quarterback in the San Francisco 49ers against the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens ended up eking out a victory in that matchup, but Colin Kaepernick getting to the Super Bowl gives another opportunity for black quarterbacks. So when you think about it, when you look at it, he would have been the first black quarterback had they won. He would have been the first since Doug Williams back in 1988. It's a long time. Doug Williams is the only black quarterback to ever lead his team to Super Bowl victory. But I think with this most recent crop of QBs, we're going to see that change pretty soon. When you're looking at these guys that are coming out, Colin Kaepernick, like I said, he led his team to the Super Bowl. He was really within inches. He was a holding call away from leading his team to a victory in the Super Bowl. You have Robert Griffin III. Of course, RG3 suffered a devastating knee injury trying to lead his team in the playoffs, even though he was injured. But I don't think that's really going to affect his game too much, because when you look at RG3, even though he's such a dynamic running threat, he's also a very accurate passer. The same thing actually counts with Kaepernick, and that's why these guys are so dynamic. So we saw Adrian Peterson come off a major knee surgery and almost break the NFL rushing record this season. So I think RG3, as long as they get him in great hands, which they will, he'll be able to recover. He may be a little bit slower running the ball initially, but because he's such an accurate passer, I don't think that's going to affect him as much as some people think it's going to. So RG3 is definitely a really quality quarterback. Russell Wilson is another guy. All three of these guys, Kaepernick, Wilson, and RG3, I mean, they had legitimate shots at leading their teams to the Super Bowl. Of course, Kaepernick made it with his team. RG3 got hurt. Russell Wilson, you know, he was really the guy that a lot of people thought those Seattle Seahawks were going to make it to the Super Bowl. They were picking Seattle over San Francisco, even though San Francisco won the division, and with good reason. Wilson is a very poised guy. Initially, when they started off the season, he was more of a game manager, kind of like the Trent Dilfer type, don't screw this up for us. But as he developed, he made a lot of big time plays, passing the ball and with his feet. So I think those three guys are really going to stand out. You're going to see a Super Bowl from one of those guys from years to come. This season, it wasn't a record for black quarterbacks. The record was 8, I believe, a few years ago. But there were 6 normal starting quarterbacks this season. The 3 I mentioned before, Cam Newton, who won Rookie of the Year last year. He's another dual threat guy who can do it with his arm as well as his feet. Michael Vick, who, you know, as he's getting up there in age, he's getting a little more injury prone. But this next season could be a comeback year for Michael Vick. Chip Kelly is taking over the Eagles. He said that he's willing to keep Vick on board. Of course, that's going to depend on Vick taking a pay cut. They're not going to pay him $15 million, but it looks like they are going to pay him his roster bonus. So there's a good chance that he will re-sign with the team at a lower amount. And Chip Kelly has the perfect type of offense that Michael Vick needs. At Oregon, he ran a lot of, he needed a dual threat quarterback in all of his schemes to be effective. So if he's going to run a similar type of system as he did in college that made him so successful, Vick actually is a great choice, pending he can stay healthy. As we've seen the past, couple seasons, that's a big if. The last starting quarterback this season, Josh Freeman, he's just a guy. I have nothing against Josh Freeman. There were a lot of, Palmer and I talked about it earlier on the Rams coverage. A lot of people have real high thoughts of him. To me, he's just another guy. Moving over to boxing, we know Devon Alexander was supposed to fight Kell Brooks on February 23rd to defend his title. He pulled out of that bout with a bicep injury. Interestingly enough, just a few days later, Floyd Mayweather went on Twitter to say that he was very close to finalizing negotiations to fight Devon Alexander. Now, of course, everybody was expecting Floyd to do battle with Robert Guerrero, or a lot of people wanted to see him fight Canelo Alvarez. Doesn't look like that's what Floyd's going to do unless this is a smokescreen. I know Writers like Dan Raphael of ESPN thinks it's a smokescreen, a contract ploy, you know, maybe to get Guerrero to come down in cost. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. I know that right now Devon Alexander is contractually obligated to fight Kell Brooks or he'll be stripped. Of course, this is boxing. Contracts in boxing mean almost nothing. It's all about the money. Floyd has enough juice in boxing and enough money to throw at the sanctioning bodies that he can ensure that that is a unification bout. So we'll have to hold our breath and see, is Devon Alexander really injured? Did he really tear his bicep? Is it just good timing? We've seen before people kind of have these injuries and call off bouts to get a bigger bout. So we'll see. Of course, love Devon Alexander. He's a hometown kid. But stepping up against Floyd Mayweather Jr., that's a whole nother league. And to be honest, Devon really hasn't stepped up in the big opportunities that he's been given. So if that fight does come to fruition, you know, hope Devon takes all that money to the bank because it's going to be a long night in the ring. Moving over to baseball, we found out this week that Cardinals pitcher Chris Carpenter is likely done. John Mozeliak, the team GM, said that Carpenter had a setback in his nerve injuries. He's having that same pain again, and he's probably going to be on the DL for the whole 2013 season. If that's the case, he's probably going to retire after this season. We've seen Carp has been a wonderful, excellent pitcher. He's one of my favorite St. Louis Cardinals, but unfortunately, his body hasn't held up too well in the time that he's been here. When he's pitching, he's on, but a lot of time he's on that DL. So if this is the last we see of Carp, want to salute him and thank you for all your service. Last but not least, moving over to the Rams. The St. Louis Rams made a few headlines. They signed Titus Young. He was a waiver wire pickup after he was released from the Detroit Lions. He's had a little bit of trouble off the field. He was drafted very high and has a potential to be one of those reclamation projects. We see that the Rams and Jeff Fisher, they're not about the four pillars. They're about taking chances on talented athletes. And I think Titus Young is a good fit considering they got him off the waiver wire. In other news, the Rams chose not to hire Rob Ryan. It was widely reported on ESPN. He was announced at the Blues game. Everybody thought that Rob Ryan was going to become the defensive coordinator for St. Louis Rams. Jeff Fisher met with him a couple times and said, it's not going to fit. Seems to be a simple issue of mathematics. Jeff Fisher prefers the 4-3. Rob Ryan runs the 3-4. And we know those Ryans don't like to put up with a bunch of change. They like to be in charge. So I could see those egos possibly clashing, and Jeff Fisher just said, nah, we got to do something different. That's all I got for you today. That's what's going on in the sports world. Make sure you log on at www.stlamerican.com and check us out on YouTube. I'm going to have links down here below, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.